It can be tough to navigate the camera brand landscape. There's so many great cameras out there, a few duds, but most companies are making amazing products right now. So how do you choose? Well, we already did a part one where we talked about some of the biggest brands like Sony, Nikon, Canon, but there are definitely some we haven't touched on. So this is part two. Let's finish explaining the state of the camera industry as it stands in 2026.
Let's do Fuji next.
Yeah. Fuji's the most recent camera that I bought. I got the XE5. And they're also the only one that is really embracing sort of odd sensor sizes, which that's kind of old news. They've been doing that for a while now, but APS-C is where they focus the most. Then they redefined what medium format is, because we used to call medium format something bigger than what the GFX system is. But GFX did such a good job of bringing large sensors, smaller than traditional medium format, but bigger than full frame. They did it so well that that's become what we call medium format now. And Hasselblad adopted the exact same sensor, which is made by Sony. And so they really redefined that category. And I think they've done an amazing job. What they were first noticed for is their retro styling. And then I think really they were embraced when people started appreciating their film simulations, that they were trying harder at that than anyone else. And they have great usability. They're fun. They just kind of picked some of the niches that nobody else was approaching. And I think unexpectedly, really carved out a solid place in the industry where they are the odd choice sometimes, but that fits in a lot of people's needs really often.
Yes.
So yeah. How do you feel about Fuji these days?
Yeah. So again, because you and I are kind of old, I remember when the first X100 came out in 2011. I started my professional video photography career in 2008. So I remember vividly when the X100 came out, and it was even at that time in 2011, I was like, wow, that's so cool. And I remember getting my hands on the original XT1, and I loved that thing. Thought it was awesome. I had a couple friends that switched over from DSLRs to the X Pro 1 for wedding photography, and they loved it. Loved the color science. Some of the things that they were doing with the sensor technology was really revolutionary, with the way that they read the RGB patterns on the sensor. You can look into all this. Yeah, the X-Trans system is what creates this kind of more filmic resolve of the image. And it's a very scientific thing that we won't get into here, but it's very nice, if I must say so myself. So obviously Fuji is the master at, making these really retrofied looking cameras. One of the things that I love about them is that even on their more flagship, pro bodies, like the XH1, for example, or the XH, do they have a 2 now? Even those cameras that are kind of made for pros and they're considered flagships, they never completely shy away from the retro styling. They kind of always keep a little bit of mojo to everything. Even the amazing cinema camera now that they have, which is the Fujifilm, what is it?
GFX. It's got a 5 in there.
G something film camera, cinema. What is it? It is the Eterna, GFX Eterna 55. They're entering into the cinema world, and it's also got some pretty awesome, mojo to the way that the thing is built and the way that it looks. And we'll see if that,
when people talk about this, is that we don't just call it retro styling. A lot of it, I think, is just good design that was maintained. And we kind of went through this weird modernist era where it was okay, let's make cameras super utilitarian. And Sony is maybe the best example of this. It's it just does what it has to do, and we don't worry about the feeling of using the camera so much. And Fuji just didn't go down that path. They're no, it should always feel very nice in the hand, feel approachable, make people excited to take photos. And they just stuck with that. And I think that's why it's spread to some other brands now. And I know we will keep calling it retro because that's how people look at it. But, when I'm carrying around an X100, I've had people often be like, oh, is that a film camera? Because it looks older, But to me, it's just good design. They're making a lot of choices that I like. So if I was to say the best of Fuji right now, it's like that color science when is good enough that people shoot JPEGs on Fuji like nothing else. If you don't plan on shooting RAWs, Fuji is, I think, the best choice for a lot of people. So it's my main recommendation to casual shooters that are taking family photos. They're not doing this professionally. They just want to have something better than an iPhone. And I find that if they've chosen a full frame camera in the past, this is just happening with a friend that I'm thinking about that he's had a Sony for years that's been sitting on the shelf, and he's got a bunch of great lenses for it, and he's not using it. And he's got a new baby, tons of family photos to be taken, but he's like, I'm not really pulling out my camera anymore. I'm like, you need to grab a Fuji and some small prime lenses, and suddenly you'll be shooting way more often than you think. And I think a lot of people would shoot more often if they had a smaller camera that is easier to use. It looks cool, like they want to have it with them, and Fuji is just perfect for that. So that's often why I recommend it. Then also the GFX system is fantastic, and it's a lot of professionals have been using it. Negatives? What are there? Is there full frame?
Yeah, I mean, that's been an argument that so many people have had for a long time. I don't think Fuji cares about that argument because they obviously aren't interested in making a full frame camera. They are just taking the classic kind of, let's look at the market and fill a need that isn't there. So they are prioritizing APS-C, which nobody else is really doing, as making it a priority. And then, of course, this larger format system, which is technically better than full frame, they're doing really well. So I wouldn't fault them for not having full frame. However, I will say if they did have a true full frame competitor, it would be that much more interesting to put them into the conversation. Maybe if they themselves could go back in time, I wonder if they would do that. But at this point, they've really put their feet in the sand and said, no, we're not going to do that. I don't know about you, but like the trying to be a Leica thing, but it's really not. And it kind of feels like sometimes like a Temu Leica to me. Like the Fuji retro look and stuff, it looks cool and it's good, but it's like something's missing here. Like there's something that doesn't feel like the real deal. I don't know. Maybe I'm being way too superficial, but when you compare to a Hasselblad or a Leica or whatever, it's like, is this a poor man's Leica? It's like, yeah. And then my brain is like, yeah, well, I don't want to walk around with a poor man's Leica. I just want a real one. So,
well, yeah, the negatives I would give it are that the actual build quality isn't the best. It's not at the same level as Nikon, Canon, or Sony or Leica. I mean, and this is on the APS-C systems, just the button feel, the choice of where there's plastic versus metal. It's not the top build quality, and it usually doesn't matter. It's not like they break that much more often than other cameras, but it doesn't have the feel of some of the best. I also think their film simulations, because we give them so much attention, it's worth criticizing them a little bit as well. And that I think some of them are a bit old. Many of them are too similar to others. Like if you flip through some of those film sims, it's like there's a lot of kind of redundancy in there that, I don't know. I think people like impart there to be a magic in the color science that is actually just basic LUT presets in a way. And it's just that other camera companies haven't picked up on how powerful this can be to have like beautiful out of camera JPEGs. Totally. Fuji did it first, so they have the reputation, but they could still do better. Oh, and one other thing they do very well, I want every other company to do this, is the DR400 option. I want to do a whole video about this, but just like when you shoot DR400 on a Fuji, it basically is underexposing the image to preserve many more stops of highlight detail, like 4 or 5 stops. It's huge. You get way more detail in the highlights. And the way people shoot all their other cameras this way, like Sony shooters do it all the time, where I do this on my Leica and on my Hasselblad as well, underexpose, so you hold on to the highlight detail, but your image is underexposed when you take it. So you can't, let's say your subject is what you will end up seeing in the end, like they're completely dark and you can't see the expression on their face. You can't see if their eyes are open because the preview is underexposed. That's what Fuji is doing, but you're getting it properly exposed preview so the image looks normal and it saved all the highlight detail. It's wild to me that nobody else is doing this properly. Huge plus for Fuji, and everybody should be doing it.
Yeah, let's move on.
Another negative.
Oh, go ahead.
One last negative. Not enough lens selection. A lot of their
Yeah.
lenses are getting pretty old and are a bit too soft right now. Like they don't support the higher resolution 40 megapixel X-trans sensors. Let's move on.
Yeah.
Who do you want to talk about?
But wildly successful Fujifilm X100, of course. Everybody wants a newer, better one. So hopefully they make more X100s.
So everybody can buy one. Should we
All
get to Lumix right now? Because this
sure.
is kind of our...
That's what we're shooting on right now.
Yeah, and we resist praising too often because we're both very big fans of what Panasonic has done with the Lumix system over the last 2 years.
And full disclosure, both of us have worked with Lumix. I don't believe either one of us have paid for the cameras that we're using right now. So I think it's important to mention that. So
yes, absolutely. We were both still on sort of like long-term loaner cameras, which I mean, thanks for not asking for it back at this moment, Lumix. But I'm on the GH7. Which one are you using today?
I'm on the S9 with the 35mm f1.8.
And the thing is, we both own a ton of other cameras. Like there's no shortage of Canons, Sonys, Fujis. I mean, I could go through I bought virtually all of these other brands we're talking about. The Lumix system just typically has the most hybrid features that I want to use at any given time. Like they will be the first to see an opening of like, oh, this feature should just be here. Like this is so clearly missing from all the other brands. Let's just do it. And they will just jump on it. And it takes so long for many of the other brands to catch up.
Yeah.
So I just keep shooting with it. Like I'm so happy with the Lumix system. I don't know.
Yeah. And at least here in America,
what more can I say?
Matt and Sean, who I know well from Lumix, like, remember I was talking about the people who I've interacted with Canon who wear suits and enjoy their cushy jobs and they take themselves very seriously. The guys at Lumix are like total rock stars, punk rock, like they understand what's happening in the entire industry. They understand what video shooters want. They understand what photographers want. Like I could talk to them much more naturally like this. And I can riff on like, hey, why don't you guys have this? It's stupid that you don't have this. And then they give me either a dumb answer and they know it's dumb and they kind of give me a wink, wink, or like they actually respond with a good answer. And I'm like, okay, that makes sense. So I do think like, at least from a PR standpoint, I've enjoyed interacting with these guys because they really listen to our feedback and seem to implement it, year over year over year. And, yeah, I mean, where do we even start? I guess if you think about the GH system back in the day, if we go back to the DSLR revolution, the GH3 was this amazing, I mean, the GH2 as well, actually, because I believe there was a hack that enabled the GH2 to be like this really high bitrate 1080p mirrorless camera when Philip Bloom was talking about it. The GH3 and then the GH4, which I believe was the first 4K capable mirrorless camera on the market.
When I first saw the 4K coming out of that, I was just blown away. And it's a Micro Four Thirds camera. Like what they were doing with that sensor was really amazing at the time.
The only hybrid cameras that were shooting 4K at that time were the GH4 and the 1DC, which I also own still to this day. But the 1DC was $15,000 and the GH4 was only a couple thousand, and it was very, very good. And then of course the GH5, if you've been around for any, at least the last 6 years, you have heard this camera, iconic camera. The GH5 with the IBIS stabilization on the sensor was absolutely groundbreaking, revolutionary. Many documentaries have been shot on the GH5. It's small, it's compact, the 4K looks fantastic. The only issue was the autofocus, and that's where Canon and Sony kind of ate their lunch, and Lumix finally, over the last couple of years, has come around to updating to a better focusing system called Phase Detect with the S5 II. And when the S5 II came out, from that point forward, it's like, okay, they've solved the biggest issue, and now it's actually an amazing, all the things that we loved about the GH5 but couldn't go fully into because of the autofocus. Now it's like, okay, well, the autofocus was the last missing ingredient. Because the autofocus was so bad, I think they needed to vie our attention with all these amazing features like shutter angle and anamorphic shooting modes and waveforms and all these things that video shooters really crave and want these hybrid cameras to have. They implemented them because the autofocus was so bad. I don't know if that's why, but like that's how I think about it, at least. And then they're like, okay, well, how about we just go ahead and put phase detect on it, and we'll keep all these other things. And now, I'm shooting on a Lumix S9 right now. It's a full frame camera that can shoot 6K open gate with amazing autofocus, that's super tiny, that I could buy on eBay right now for like under $1,200. So it's really an amazing thing. And that's why we speak so highly of these cameras, is because they're great workhorse tools, and they do the job really well for a very affordable price. So,
well, even though they're well praised by a lot of shooters, like Jordan from Petapixel has been a Panasonic fan for a long time, and I just wouldn't even try them because of the autofocus. I was like, look, if autofocus doesn't work, don't call me, cool. Yeah. It's got all these other things, but I need autofocus to work. So I just did not try it until the S5 II. That's when I started shooting it more and more. And I think even at that point, they were a little bit behind for quite a while in terms of photo. Like the photography was functional, like it was decent, but they weren't leading in any way, and there'd be little trade-offs. And a great example is not having tethering support. So, when I was first using those loaner systems, I started thinking about like, oh, maybe I'll kind of switch to Lumix. Then I realized like, wait, I can't shoot tethered in studio. Like, okay, that's a deal breaker. I mean, I need to be able to offer that to my clients, even if I don't do it all the time. It's not my primary way of shooting, but I can't not have that option. You could do it with Panasonic software, but nobody's realistically doing that.
Yeah.
And, now they're offering Capture One support, the tethering is there. And, so they've also caught up in terms of photography and the autofocus. And those were the two biggest missing things. And same, like you say, all along, they've been stacking up all these smaller features. And we obviously need to circle back to the stabilization. You mentioned that when we were talking about some of the other brands. Lumix image stabilization, best in any full frame camera available. So there's a lot of those things that like once I start using them and then I go pick up another, let's say a Canon system or a Sony system that I have loved in the past, I'm like, well, but where's all these little extra features that I got used to on my Lumix? So they're really in a good place right now.
They are, yeah. They've had a great year. The S9 was a big hit, and then now this new S10 that they just released is great. They do have two systems.
They kind of have this interesting push of micro four third and full frame, which I don't think anybody else is in that split position in the same way that they are. And yeah, like S1 II and the S1 II are like the really top ones available right now, but they have a lot of options too. Like you can get some very cheap Lumixes, like basically another big plus, if you want a full system with like, let's say the trinity of 3 zoom lenses and a top of the line camera, and you're comparing Canon, Sony, Nikon, Lumix will by far be the most affordable and have some of the most features. Like it'll have features that the others don't, which is amazing. And I don't think a lot of people realize that even though you're paying less, you are actually getting more. So like that's a huge plus.
The L-mount Alliance is pretty great. With Sigma, there's some great Sigma options. There's even more third-party options showing up now. So
I think those are all the pluses. But if I was to say the worst of Lumix right now is like maybe, even though what you're saying with L-mount is true, like there is there's a healthy ecosystem. I think they're missing some kind of key first party lenses. Great examples like a fast ultra wide, like they have the 16 to 35 f4. They don't have a 2.8, which every other system has.
Yeah. If you tell that to a Panasonic rep, they'll just say, yeah, but Sigma makes the same, and it's the same as a native. So that's their response every time you say that. So I do wonder if they're being told by the high ups, it's like, yeah, this whole L-mount Alliance thing, like we might as well just call Sigma lenses Lumix lenses, because it's essentially a first party support system. It's not a true like third party, but I feel like that's a bit of a cop out to me, because I do want the Panasonic, engineers work in the Pro series. By the way, Lumix Pro lenses might as well be Leica lenses, because Lumix Pro lenses are serviced and kind of built in partnership with Leica. So that's the partnership that you see, and we'll get into Leica I guess, next, because Leica cameras might as well just be reskinned Panasonic cameras, which is really interesting.
If I could give one more downside to Lumix right now as well, on these newer ones, the battery life isn't awesome. It's not terrible. Like it's usable. It's
Oh,
not
really?
a big problem. But yeah,
I guess I haven't used
the
new ones. The S5 II is no problem. I've never had any issues.
Yeah, if you
with
compare the S1 II or the S1 IIR to especially to Sony, that's the most recent comparison that I was doing. It's like the Sony blows them away. Like you crush the batteries on the Lumix, whereas you don't on the Sony.
Okay.
So,
well, I guess open gate and the IBIS and all that's a lot of power.
yes, it's true. Autofocus is also not at the same level as I'd say Nikon, Sony, Canon. It's very good. It's not a problem, but it's not quite in the same place.
Yeah, it's certainly not a problem too much, but yeah, I wish that they would continue to. They just need to continue to advance that, and I'm sure they will. Another limitation in my book is the lack of body options. Like if you look at Sony, even Canon, there's a real great lineup of affordable, cheap, small, compact, all the way up to the flagships. Right now, we basically just have the flagship, and then we do have the S9, which is great, but I would just love to see a little bit more variety in the bodies. And then also, too, this kind of big question mark with the Micro Four Thirds system. It does seem that they're moving away from it because of the L-mount alliance, the focus on the flagship full-frame bodies, the kind of just general like entire market moving towards full-frame. And because the S9 is such a small, compact, full-frame body, and they're making pancake lenses for it, you can actually get a full-frame S9 with a compact lens, and it's smaller and lighter than a GH7, and it's full-frame with 6K. So, like, I can understand that they're like, this is just, we're moving on, this is outdated technology, but I still think there's a place for Micro Four Thirds, and that's in the micro-sized cameras, like literally teeny tiny, something smaller than a Fuji X100 type camera. The L10 just came out.
GH7 is huge.
Yeah, the GH7 is massive. And I think if you put that GH7 sensor, which is a fantastic sensor, in a teeny tiny little body, similar to what Panasonic has done in the past, just look to their own library of Micro Four Thirds cameras. They used to make tiny little cameras that were the size of an iPhone. I think that would do really well with interchangeable lenses, of course. The L10 just came out, so that was exciting. It's a Micro Four Thirds based sensor. It's actually the GH7 censored, but it's a windowed sensor. It's a little bit cropped in. Nice little zoom lens built into that thing. Image looks great, but that's still not exactly what I'm talking about. I would love to see a compact little interchangeable body
really
camera.
compact.
Similar to what they used to do in the past. So I think that's missing, and I think it would be very popular, if I'm being honest.
The other biggest downside, nobody knows what a Lumix is. Is this Panasonic? Is this Lumix? Like the branding is just hard to talk about. We've even been switching back and forth here, and I just wish they had always called these Panasonic cameras for clarity. But
Sony
hard to
Alpha,
explain to people that don't
Canon,
pay attention
EOS,
to.
they all do that. But
let's talk about Leica next. L-mount alliance. And let's do it kind of quickly because a lot of it overlaps, especially the full frame cameras. I never pay that much attention to them because I would just generally choose the Lumix over it. There isn't a huge advantage. Yeah, SL1, SL2, SL3, they're very, very good in all the ways that we're saying Lumix is amazing. But even though I'm about to say some very nice things about other Leicas, I find those to be a little like, I would just choose the Lumix version of it,
Yeah, I know.
You get a better build quality out of the Leica. They're great, but you're just spending money for the sake of it for nicer build quality.
It's a Rolex. You can't deny that.
Totally. It's like, I don't blame people for buying the premium version. It's just not as exciting. So let's move on from the SLs. Then there's the M series from Leica, which is has a long heritage. That's really what they're known for. Super expensive. Like, talk about the luxury version of a camera, but friggin' beautiful. Do you ever shoot M's?
Yeah, I used to own an M3 before it was stolen, unfortunately. That was my great uncle's Leica M3 that he bought in 1964. And it was a family heirloom, and unfortunately it got stolen. So I have the serial number saved as an eBay item. So if it ever pops up on eBay, I'll get notified.
I hope. Yeah.
I'm hoping I could find it, even if I'm like in my 70s and I find it one day, I will be excited. I think it's possible. But anyways, I was a big fan of it. I think M's are film cameras. I don't think they are good digital cameras. I know Cam Mackey is going to kill me. I know that Dave Amell might kill me, but I just feel like an M is better suited for being, and I love that they still make them a film camera. So like if I were to spend money on an M camera, I would buy an M6. I'd buy, the MP, something like that, because I don't know. I just think the whole process makes sense to be on film. To do that whole process with digital is like you get the experience, but not really the whole thing. And then it's like, okay, well, why didn't I just use a normal digital camera at that point? I don't know. But I guess I maybe we should talk to Cam Mackey about it. I know there's a whole thing, to it, and that's cool. And I think photographers love it. And there's many, Ben Heisch, another friend of mine, that shoots on M. He shoots weddings with M's. And I'd imagine that the clients that hire him are maybe even hiring him because he shoots on M cameras. So it is a really unique thing, and it's very artistic, and photography is an art form, and it's a really beautiful paintbrush, and the sensors are great. There's nothing wrong with them at all. So yeah, I don't know. It's a very artistic choice.
I would love an M of any shape or form. M6 is probably what, if I end up with one, that's probably what it'll be. But I kind of agree that like the digitals, they're really great, but I wouldn't choose it on like a mission critical job where you need to get as much in focus as possible, because manual focus is like, it's fun if you have the time, but when people are like, oh, it's good to just slow down and find the image, I'm like, I can't shoot like that. I can't misfocus half the time because I'm slowing down. So I like the idea of it. I would like to have it as as a luxury camera for when I'm shooting things that aren't mission critical. But generally, it's just like it doesn't really fit into my lifestyle. I would more so choose it for film shooting.
But you are
that brings
Q
us
shooter.
to the Q system, which I am a huge fan of. My Q3 sees a lot of use. It's often what I'm bringing with me all the time. And I would love to see Leica lean into the Q system even more. Crazy sharp lenses, much cheaper than the M. I mean, cheaper than any of them. It's cheaper than the M's, cheaper than the SL system, and performs so incredibly well. So you get the benefits of those L lenses, incredible quality, incredible sensors now, which was kind of an issue before, was you would only get 20 megapixels on older Qs. And now it's like, oh, great, they're 60. And the autofocus is good. Like it's not as good as others, but it's not a problem. If you want to hear me go on and on about why the Q3 is the best, I talked about it a lot in our EDC episode. But yeah, what more can I say? I just want there to be more Q options available. It's a fixed lens, so you only have the one that's on there, either 28 millimeters or 43. But I kind of just want to have a Q in every focal length. They're really great. I'm a huge fan of it. It's expensive, but it performs very well. Like it's not as much of, let's say, a luxury as the SL or the M system. So
Sure.
I love the Qs.
Yeah, I mean the Q kind of created a whole market of and kind of helped create this whole like EDC world, along with the Fujifilm, of course, the Fujifilm X100. But yeah, Q is awesome. I hope they continue to advance it. Would love to see better stabilization, better autofocus, all those types of things that they're now doing with the SL line. The SL3P just came out, and that's actually looks like a fantastic camera. I mean, it's basically an S1R2 with better features. So it's a better S1R2 technically, but for twice the money. So it would be cool if they did a Q with that same technology, I think.
Yeah, they seem to have not held back on the Q. Like they really pack everything into it, and then for a Leica, provided at like a pretty reasonable price compared to the other Leicas, which is all very relative. It is expensive.
If you don't know the price, though,
like,
everybody, it's $7,000 for a Leica Q3.
Yeah.
So it's not cheap.
No, but compared to the M's, I mean, an M you're looking at $7,000 for the body, or $8,000, I think, for body only, and you don't have a lens, and those lenses are $7,000 or $8,000. So it's like the scale is totally different.
Yeah, for sure.
Let's get through the rest of these. OM system. I am playing with a OM3 right now.
Yeah.
That's
Welcome to the
that's
club.
the one that you've got, right?
Yeah, the people who like OM are fans and they stick around. It's like a weird little subculture of fanboys. The people who like them really do love them, and I'm one of them. I've been using the Olympus system since the EM1 Mark II, when that kind of did a big firmware update that allowed autofocus in 4K with a flip screen. I switched to the EM1X from Olympus back in, gosh, I guess this was in 2018 or something like that, because it was the only camera on the market that had amazing IBIS, great color science, a flip screen, 4K with good autofocus. None of those things in combination existed. And I switched over to that as a YouTuber for a couple years. And the cool and fun thing about that was that I actually fell in love with the system. I love, just like Nikon, their build on those bodies are really well engineered. Olympus makes a lot of money with their medical instruments, so they have a whole background in ergonomics and things like that. So that's what I heard from somebody, is like their ergonomics are really well designed, well engineered, because a lot of the engineers who work there have a background in medical instrumentation, and so they really study like what is ergonomically comfortable to hold. So their OM1 system is really good. The OM system in general was the Olympus company kind of went out of business, was purchased by this company, and then they rebranded to OM Systems. So that's why they're called that now, but they're basically Olympus still. The problem with them is that because they're kind of this weird in between of like all this technology from Olympus that they're now repurposing with OM, like they haven't made a brand new sensor. Like the OM1 came out right during this acquisition period, and the OM1 Mark II, which is currently their flagship camera, is the same sensor as the OM1. They just added a newer processor that gave it some newer features. And then now the camera that Tyler and I both have our hands on. I bought mine. I think yours is a loaner.
Yeah, I've got a 2-week loan right now. I'm just playing with it.
Yeah. The OM3, which has the retro styling that we've talked a lot about, and I think they've done a really good job with the retro styling. It looks great. It's a really pretty camera. That is using the same sensor as the OM1 Mark II. So I'm a little concerned that they just are going to be very behind on sensor technology. I don't know what their future really looks like. They are paying a lot of influencers to do videos. So I still see videos often promoting the cameras, but like they are not doing anything forward focused. Like, again, the sensor that we're using on their modern cameras is the same one that came out during the Olympus OM system purchase and rebrand. So I'm really curious to see what a true OM systems sensor is going to look like. All their other lower level cameras are using the same sensor that was in the EM1 Mark II that I was just talking about. So the OM5, the OM10, those are using sensors from literally, 10 years ago. So I'm a little concerned about that. But the things that I love about it is the buttons and the dials are really well designed. I believe they're best in class in terms of weather sealing. So their cameras, you could just go off into the deep end and, get drenched with water with like a waterfall. You'd be totally fine. If it starts raining, if it's dusty, if it's dirty, all those things. Even the OM3, which is an EDC kind of camera, having it be so weather sealed for me as a dad, like running around with the kids, getting dirty, like, slip and slide at the pool, all that type of stuff. I love using the camera as a dad because I just have no worries that the camera will be fine in all those like dad mode, situations. I took it to Disneyland. It was a wonderful camera to take pictures and video at Disneyland for my kids. The video is competent now. It's 4K 10-bit with amazing stabilization. So they finally, kind of gave us all the things. It's definitely not the best at really anything, but I do prefer their colors and their raw files to the Panasonic Micro Four Thirds system, actually. Even though the G9 II and the GH7 would seem to fit my desires and my needs as a professional and as a hybrid shooter, because I'm so used to the Lumix system, I just find myself enjoying the OM system much more. I think the the images coming off of the camera, some of my favorite images I've ever taken of my children next to the Hasselblad. And that's using the 17mm f1.2 Pro lens, which is just a god tier lens. The bokeh on it is insane. So yeah, it's small, it's compact, fairly affordable. Images look good. Like, I would choose this over a Fuji any day, personally.
I think it's the best thing to say about it is that small compactness, especially because if you're into the micro four thirds lifestyle, which means more affordable lenses that are much smaller with tons of versatility, like that's the biggest attraction of micro four thirds to me. You get the smaller body that is not available with any of the Lumix systems, which drives me crazy, right? It's like, yeah, okay, we've got this tiny little sensor. Why are the bodies all big? Like the G9 II that you mentioned, GH7, they're both full size bodies. They're as big as the full frames.
Yeah.
Olympus is the one giving us the more compact version of micro four thirds. So if you like micro four thirds, but you want a smaller experience, then Olympus is probably the way to go. And like I said, I've only had mine for about a week and I've not done that much with it, but just feeling it out, I'm like, yeah, this feels great. It's nice in the hand, fits in a relatively small bag. Like you say, I just hope they can keep moving forward.
And of course, I didn't even mention it because I'm not a wildlife shooter, but I think they have that on lock. They've got amazing AI tracking for all sorts of different animals. And a lot of features that birding photographers especially ask for. So that's kind of who they really focus their market towards, because it's one of the last few reasons why you would choose a smaller sensor, because of the reach you get with a lens like a 300mm turns into a 600mm, and it's a lens that's half the size of a Sony and, you know, often a third of the price. So they are leaning into those advantages, but I personally like the OM3 as an EDC. So I've got the Lumix 12-35 on mine right now, and it's great like that. But then I also have teeny tiny lenses for it, and it's fantastic.
Well, we've still got a couple left to go. Hasselblad, who I have worked with a bunch, so I got to disclose that right up front. And I have some of their bodies and lenses by working with them. So very important to mention that, because these are super expensive, premium, somewhat luxury cameras. But they're also awesome.
Yeah.
So, you know, Hasselblad's really having a bit of a comeback moment. And actually, this is another chance let's wrap up DJI into this as well. Talk about them kind of both at the same time, because now Hasselblad is owned by DJI. And I think that really, it absolutely saved them. Hasselblad was more directly competing with Phase One in the past. And, as in, like, that's the traditional larger medium format sensor that we were talking about before, like actually medium format. And now they've gone down to that same size that the GFX system uses. So kind of an in-between. But I think it's made them a lot more approachable. There's a lot more people that can find a use for that. Instead of it's shrunk down the size of the body. They've gone for a more compact set of lens options. And I think it's just more people that can find the utility in that set of design constraints. So they are, I kind of think of them as like a bit of the luxury version of GFX. And I say luxury because it's like, it's not that they're better. Like, it's not just objectively like you'll get something better out of the Hasselblads than the Fujis, because it is the same sensor in the end. But the shooting experience is incredible. Like the build quality of those bodies is perfect. Like, might be the best. Just really fantastic usability. They put a lot of thought into it. It feels so good in the hand. You want to carry it around with you. It's relatively small, considering you're using a medium format camera. Like, it's just not, it actually can fit in a normal size camera bag, not that much bigger than a lot of full frame bodies, which is crazy. So they're doing some very impressive things, targeted at a relatively small niche for a high price. I don't know. What do you think of Hasselblad right now?
Yeah, I've also had some hands-on with Hasselblad over the years with the, PR team and stuff. So I don't own any or have any, but I had some great time with the X1D and then the X1D Mark II. I have not had a ton of time with the X2D, which I believe really took it to the next level. But my biggest takeaway is their color science is like truly magical. I believe they even coined a name for it, right? It's the Hasselblad, True Color or something like that. Like
natural. I can't forget the name.
Yeah, and it's just even though they use a similar sensor to the Fuji GFX system, when I've had time with the GFX system, even though yes, it's absolutely amazing, the images that came off my Hasselblad or the time that I had it, just like my jaw just hits the floor. Like it's just it's one of those things like you can't unsee it.
Hasselblad natural color system.
Yeah, the natural color system, and I totally agree with that. Like it just captures the world in such a beautiful and perfect way. Like it's, I'm not trying to like be a fanboy over here, but like I've never really experienced anything like it where you just take the picture and then you look at it on your camera, or, you know, on your computer when you come home, and you're like, and you zoom in, especially if you zoom in a little bit, like on the eyeball. Like if you take a picture on a 35 millimeter equivalent of a subject, and then you zoom in on the eye, and it's like unbelievably sharp and perfect on the eye as well. Like you could see the reflection of yourself taking the picture in somebody's eyeball. It's like,
Yep.
I've never, this is magic. It's absolutely amazing. If you can afford it, it's like, and you're in that market, they're slow, you know, they're not going to compete with a Sony in terms of speed. If you're trying to,
but you know what? They are a lot faster than they used to be. Like that, I think there was a lot more downsides up until recently, like the X2D2 has resolved the autofocus issue. It's not the same. Like I say, it's not the same as a Sony, but it is not a problem. Like you can just keep shooting and you're not missing focus much. So
that's exciting.
Autofocus has gotten really awesome, and the speed. Like I shoot in burst mode all the time. Like I just power through, and that's.
Are they still doing a leaf shutter?
Yes, and it's leaf shutter inside of the lens, so you can also have faster shutter syncs when you're shooting with strobes. So, I mean, what a great system. The downsides, obviously the price is one of them, right? Like you can get more for less money. It's not the highest value. It's more about like you want a really premium experience. And if I can make one specific critique, is something I was talking about with the Fuji system with DR400. Remember I was saying like the way that you expose kind of drives me crazy exposing with the Hasselblad, because even though there's tons of dynamic range in that sensor, its base exposure lets the highlights clip too much. Like if the highlights are high, it's not holding on to as much detail as it should be able to. Like it's one of those cameras that if you underexpose it, you got all this range that those latitude you can bring out later, but you have to underexpose it. And I'm like, I don't want that. I want to be able to see the image as I'm going to use it and still have the ability to retain my highlights. So that kind of drives me crazy. I'd also love to have a smaller RAW option. Those files are enormous. I mean, 200 plus megabytes per image. And sometimes I want to use that body and those lenses, but I don't need 100 megapixels.
Exactly.
It'd be helpful if I could have, you know, compressed RAW, 50 megapixel mode. I don't know, some way to shoot a smaller photo and still use the Hasselblad system.
That was kind of my hesitation too, to ever dip into the X2D, and almost I'm just looking at like X1D used because yeah, it's extremely slow, but when you nail it, it's amazing. And I think 50 megapixels is plenty, and I don't really want to go beyond that personally. So.
And then DJI with that, I mean, they've just been in an amazing place lately. I don't know how many specific models we'll go into, but the biggest thing to talk about is...
The government has slowed them down a bit.
Yes, that they're not available to Americans is very difficult right now. And I'm kind of just like imagining that'll someday get resolved, although it may not. But it's just worth mentioning them because they've been such a force in the industry for years now. They've been super innovative. The Osmo 3 like defined a whole new category of cameras that was enormous, and they're going to have some challenges coming up. I don't know. I don't want to talk about too much the availability of them because again, that might be a moving target, but what they do in terms of design and quality, and I mean, it's just been incredible. I think they've changed how a lot of us perceive Chinese cameras. You know, the whole industry of Chinese cameras is like the bar has risen massively, all because of DJI, and DJI is pushing the international bar further up because they just do such a good job. So,
well, like you said earlier, I think their acquisition of Hasselblad was one of the best decisions that they ever made, because you can see a direct correlation to where their cinema style cameras and their log images started looking actually good, and the acquisition of Hasselblad. Some of their top end, options from Mavic are actually putting the Hasselblad logo on the cameras. So I believe Hasselblad's team is involved in the process of tuning these cameras, and so they're very, very good. Their log is totally competent. And what's so interesting now is like you see the Inspire 2 drone. You kind of think like there's always going to be this crazy high end, big, bulky, massive drone thing that's used for film in the higher end of things. But it does seem like now the Mavics have gotten so good, you don't even need to go towards these big, bulky drones anymore with big cameras. Like the smaller camera systems, I mean, the Mavic 4 system is still pretty big, but I remember back in the day shooting on the Phantom series and rigging out, a GoPro system with it. And I mean, these things have gotten smaller, faster.
You know what's wild is that the Phantoms, if you were to go out and fly like a Phantom 1 or what, like, like they still are awesome drones. They're giant, but like they still perform well. The cameras still hold up. Like it's crazy.
But I mean, the Mavic 4 Pro is $2,700 on B&H right now that I'm looking at here. And you could not get a Phantom kit for that much 15 years ago. So, you're spending $3,000 on a kit with a GoPro that looked way worse. So even though, inflation has occurred, the technology has gotten so good and so small and compact that the amount of money that you spend on a cinema grade drone now is insane. And, remember back in the old days before drones, you had to use a literal helicopter to get shots like this. And it's funny looking at old movies from the 80s and 90s and seeing these opening shots that are filmed on a helicopter and how bouncy the
Shining
footage
is a great example. Yeah.
They didn't have gimbals back then at all. And in fact, drones are what created the gimbal movement in general. Like they had to stabilize the cameras on the drones, and then that informed the whole handheld gimbal system that we now use. So if it wasn't for drones, if it wasn't for DJIs and FreeFly doing this technology, then we wouldn't have handheld gimbals like the Ronin. And unfortunately, FreeFly totally dropped the ball. They had the Movi, which was industry standard for a long time, but not anymore. But anyways, DJI crushing it.
Yeah, I'd say the best of DJI is everything, but the worst of DJI is that you can't really buy them right now. So sums it up pretty well.
Yeah, thankfully, well, you can buy them. You can buy all the previous gen stuff that came out before all the American stuff. So like you can still buy anything that was out before. Like it's all in stock right now on B&H. All this stuff is going to get worked out, hopefully.
I'm glad at least I'm still getting them so we can talk about them on the show. I can tell you how they are.
You'll be our Canadian getting the DJI stuff.
Exactly. We do have one camera company left, and that's Blackmagic Design, which I think let's do pretty briefly because they're just not as big as they were right now. I think they really had some very interesting developments early on with video with like things like the Blackmagic Pocket Camera. And that's not to say that they're like doing anything bad right now, but it's just not, I don't think they're as important in terms of their camera development as they were previously. They have some really impressive bodies. Their fans will continue to use them. When I use them, I'm like, these are great. I love the usability. Awesome. Menu systems, amazing. Just like all of the Blackmagic software. Like this company just crushes it all the time. Like they know how to build things. And they've always tried to kind of find their niche by doing things differently with cameras. But that also means that they've stayed kind of niche. I think just because we're kind of out of time, I don't want to go too deep, but they do a great job, but not a ton of people use them.
I beg to differ. You might be missing the target. It's not us. It's not the filmmaker indie guys. It's churches. It's live productions.
Right.
It's stuff like that. Because every church in America and Canada or the world really uses Blackmagic hardware for their multicams and their live stream stuff. And what's the best camera to plug into that hardware? Blackmagic cameras. And I can tell you,
it all integrates.
Being in dozens of churches as a Christian professional doing, Christian music, stuff, Blackmagics are everywhere at those places because if you can buy a camera for under $2,000 that plugs in over SDI to your Blackmagic setup, and it gives you full first-party support of the software that you're using in the back with the hardware that's user-friendly for volunteers who show up on a Sunday and have never operated a camera before, that is exactly what these cameras are built for. And I don't think they're as popular in our little niche of people because they don't even take pictures really at all. They're full video cameras. They're not hybrids at all. I guess you could argue they might be. They're also the benefit they used to have back in the day with the original Pocket and the original Cinema camera was they were extremely affordable raw shooting cameras, and their color science was great with the DaVinci Resolve and the Blackmagic RAW, which was first of its kind. I personally owned two Blackmagic Pocket cameras with speed boosters, and I used those for a couple of years. I broke, I think, two of them. Like, they literally snapped in half because their build quality was so bad. But I went all over the world with those things. I literally went to Africa and Nicaragua and Mexico City and did all these amazing, cool missionary videos back in the day. And having all that dynamic range in 2010 or whatever when that thing came out was like so amazing. It probably wasn't that early.
I think the image quality really was world class at that time. Like when they were first innovating with the Blackmagic RAW and stuff, like it was kind of the best you could find for a little while. Like it really had a lot more dynamic range than other options, more bit depth, more flexibility, and color science was there. Like they were really killing it. And the trade-off was no autofocus, which is still...
And the Pixis system is great. It's 12K. You know, they're offering things that don't exist anywhere else. Of course, don't forget the one and only Apple Vision Pro camera.
Yeah.
So totally, Blackmagic is a really interesting company because of their integration with Resolve, with the amount of money they make with their actual hardware that isn't for the cameras. The cameras sort of supplement some of this other hardware that's used on live productions. So it's a really unique camera company that serves a really unique niche. If you're going to a live concert, if you're going to these types of events, if you look around, you may likely see a lot of Blackmagics running around.
Well, we covered an incredible amount of ground today, and hopefully this will help guide you through your camera decision making, which is hard. I don't know. Did we just make it easier or harder to choose a camera?
I think we just educated people. I don't know if we made any. I don't think that we helped them make a choice. They just are like, okay, now I know.
Yep. Now you know. If you want more of this, check us out on all the social platforms at Full Stack Creator Show. And if you want to learn how to make thumbnails that get clicks, check out David's thumbnailacademy.com. Or if you want beautiful LUTs and Lightroom presets for your photos and videos, head to stallman.com/shop.